Welcome to Perfectionists Anonymous, a podcast dedicated to unraveling the myth of perfectionist living. I'm your host, Caitlin, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. I invite you to sit down, relax, and hang out with me, your supportive friend, who knows how difficult perfectionism can be and who wants to find a better way. Thank you for joining me today. Only put off until tomorrow what you are willing to die having left undone. Pablo Picasso. Greetings, fellow perfectionists, and welcome to episode number 2 of Perfectionists Anonymous. I am your host, Caitlin, and I am a recovering perfectionist. Today, I want to talk about an area of perfectionism that honestly kind of snuck up on me somehow. Like, I didn't know that it was impacting me until I started learning to step back from perfectionism. And then, bam, there it was. I'm speaking, of course, of what you saw in the title, procrastination. Now, the reason that this particular difficulty snuck up on me is because I didn't believe that I was a procrastinator at all. When it came to academic or work tasks, I always got them done on time. And I mean always. I never turned in an assignment late, I never missed a deadline on paperwork, and I never waited until the last minute to work on a large project like a presentation or paper. I never procrastinated on any of these because procrastination is viewed in our society as imperfect. People who procrastinate are unfairly labeled with immoral personality traits, lazy, irresponsible, or disorganized. Because it was my distinct goal for the longest time to be anything but imperfect, I forced myself to not procrastinate on things that were labeled quote-unquote important. Which brings in another interesting point. How do we know which tasks in life are important and which ones are not? The timely completion of certain tasks is regularly validated and rewarded. If you finish your homework on time, your teachers and your parents tell you that you are responsible and a good student. If you finish all your projects on time and don't miss deadlines at work, your boss lauds your accomplishments and praises you for being so on top of things. Conversely, there are a lot of tasks in life that we probably think for one reason or another we are supposed to do right away, but they don't have the same amount of validation associated with them. For example, I think a lot of us feel like we're supposed to not leave dirty dishes in the sink. That's a task that we feel we shouldn't procrastinate because, remember, procrastination is bad. But you can usually get away with it because not that many people are going to notice. And if they do, there isn't necessarily a ton of social capital relying on the completion of the dishes. Your partner or roommates might have an issue with it, but they don't have the same power that an authority figure does, and so it feels less intense. Don't get me wrong, it can still definitely sting when you procrastinate on a task so simple and somebody points it out to you with even a hint of frustration. But it seems easier to justify somehow. Like, do you even realize how many other and more important things I needed to do first? The dishes can wait. But that right there is a form of procrastination. And I never wanted to admit that to myself because, again, procrastination equals bad. Or does it? Why do I believe that so strongly, and what's the big deal? Isn't it a good thing to believe that procrastination is bad so then you won't do it? You'll shame yourself into getting everything done right away because that will make you a good person? Let's break that down, starting with why we believe so strongly that procrastination is such a bad thing. I touched on this already, but we believe it's such a bad thing because it is so heavily reinforced by our educational system and subsequently by our capitalistic work systems. And this makes sense because it ties into so many things that are reinforced by our overall culture, namely productivity and hustle culture. We're supposed to constantly be working so that we can make the most money and be the best and achieve the most. That's what America is all about, isn't it? Work hard, work relentlessly hard, and then you'll be successful and achieve all your dreams. But procrastination? No. That's lazy and antithetical to the American dream. If you're avoiding work and avoiding getting stuff done, then you simply aren't living right. You aren't working hard enough. Your choices are directly causing you to fail. You aren't good enough. Right? Not necessarily. First, there are a lot of arguments to be made that procrastination can actually have a lot of positive side effects. I anecdotally know people who report bursts of creativity if they leave big projects to the last minute. And this makes sense to me. Perhaps giving your brain time to rest and fully process a project also gives it an opportunity to fully sort through all of the best ideas. But we don't even necessarily need to believe that procrastination is a good or a bad thing. I honestly just think it's important to know why we do it, and then we can actually make our own decisions about when it might make sense or when it might be maladaptive. But in order to do that, we need to think about how our perfectionism might be contributing to increased levels of procrastination. The first way that perfectionism and procrastination go hand in hand is when we procrastinate a task that seems overwhelming and do something else instead or nothing at all. I'll use an example of my own, but fill in the blanks with whatever specific instances make sense to you. Let's say I need to clean the bathrooms, but I hate cleaning bathrooms. It's true, I really do. It's tiring, I hate how it smells, and it's annoying because it's never done for good. I always need to clean them again at some point. And that makes it feel overwhelming. So instead of cleaning the bathroom, I procrastinate. I watch Netflix, I go on a walk, or I tidy up the house and organize instead. But that sense of what I'm supposed to be doing is always there. A little nagging voice in my brain shaming me for being lazy and unclean and irresponsible. Why don't you just clean the bathroom? I don't clean it because I have all these thoughts in my brain about how I can never clean my house perfectly. My house will never be clean enough. My bathrooms will never be clean enough. They'll never be completely free of dust or grime, so why bother? I have all these thoughts about how my bathrooms should be a certain way and how I should be a certain way. But I'm not, and neither are my bathrooms. And so I fight myself in my brain. My perfectionism makes me procrastinate this simple task because I know that I can never do it as well as my exacting standards demand. And then I waste a bunch of time shaming myself in the meantime, not doing the task, but also not being okay with not doing it. But this connection between procrastination and perfectionism shows up in an even bigger and more insidious way too, one that impacts our lives along a similar vein, but more profoundly. In addition to procrastinating little things that we may feel like we can't do perfectly, we may procrastinate following our dreams because we fear not being able to accomplish them perfectly or at the risk of not doing them the quote-unquote right way. That's really why I wanted to do this episode today, because I procrastinated beginning this podcast for such a long time for this exact reason. And it is such a good example of how perfectionism can impact our lives for the worse. Perfectionist brains tell us that we are not good enough to take risks. Our brains tell us that doing something new or outside of your comfort zone or unfamiliar is too dangerous because there's no way of knowing if you can do it perfectly, if you can do it right. They tell us that you don't have enough time to follow your dreams or that you don't have enough money. Perfectionist brains almost always work from a place of scarcity. You don't know enough. You don't have enough skills. You aren't enough. That dream is too big, too scary, too unknown, too unpredictable. So no matter how tantalizing it may seem, you procrastinate. Because it isn't something that you have to do in order to survive. It's just something that you maybe really want to do. So your brain says that it can sit at the wayside. And maybe one day you will be smart enough, or have enough resources, or have enough accolades, and then you can follow your dreams. But there's that lie again. Perfectionist brains don't think that anything is enough. They'll always procrastinate because a perfectionist brain says you will never be prepared. I thought about making this podcast for months, but these sorts of perfectionistic thoughts always got in my way. I work a full-time job as a speech-language pathologist. There's no way I could dedicate enough time to do this podcast well enough. I don't have a degree in psychology. I don't have a PhD. I only have a master's degree. There's no way I could do this podcast well enough. I'm not eloquent enough. I'm not funny enough. I'm not cool enough to write a podcast. All of these perfectionistic thoughts got in the way of me doing something that I was really excited about and something that I felt at the very least I could do a halfway decent job of. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know what anyone thinks. But what I do know is that perfectionism stops a lot of us from trying something new and reaching our full potential because we are so afraid of what others will think and say. We procrastinate the things that could hold so much meaning for us simply because we are too afraid of failure or judgment. And it's not like this is a one-time thing either. I've procrastinated following all sorts of dreams, like getting my PhD, because when I dig deep, I don't actually believe that I have what it takes. I'm not creative enough, unique enough, thought-provoking enough, confident enough, etc. Which is honestly absurd because I have done nothing but excel in academics. So what's stopping me now? Perfectionism. That's what is stopping me. But what if there was a different way? What if we didn't let our perfectionistic thoughts block our paths? What if we tried believing that even if we did completely faceplant and fail, which is unlikely, at least we tried and learned something new along the way? What if we actually practiced what we know to be inherently true? That there really is no such thing as perfect, and so trying can often be enough all on its own. And that's where I've landed with all of this. Because no, I still don't particularly want to procrastinate. I feel good when I have a plan, when I get things done on time, and when I feel in control of my responsibilities. My boss appreciates it too. But I also don't want to feel a ridiculous amount of shame for procrastinating when it makes sense. Putting off doing the dishes if you have a million other things going on isn't going to kill you, and it's really not something that we should guilt ourselves for. It will get done eventually. There is absolutely no need to add to the shame cycle more than we already do. And at the same time, I don't want to keep on procrastinating doing the things that I dream about. Making a podcast, taking a pottery class, traveling to a new country, getting my PhD. Anything that seems fun or exciting or invigorating to me shouldn't also have to have this underlying feeling of unease and fear because of unrealistic perfectionistic ideals. There can be a balance of procrastinating things when it makes sense, but not letting the fear of failure lead to procrastination of what is truly important. So, what's the solution? Well, who knows really? I'm not going to pretend that I have any sort of unfailing advice to give. But here's what I know. First, think about your priorities. Second, think about your time, realistically and honestly. Third, think about how it makes you feel. When I put on my to-do list that I need to clean the bathrooms, I'm making it a priority because I do want to commit to doing it. Having a clean bathroom is important to me and makes me feel more safe. But I also remember that it isn't a life or death situation, and that if something comes up that makes procrastinating the bathrooms make sense, then oh well. That's the key though. Oh well. We have to learn to be okay not doing things once in a while. If my parents spur of the moment invite me out to dinner, but I haven't cleaned the bathrooms yet, then screw it. I will procrastinate cleaning the bathrooms until another day because it is no longer a priority. And that's the second point. Think about your time realistically and honestly. If my parents didn't invite me to dinner, then I do actually have time to clean the bathrooms. If I procrastinate at that point, then I really need to think about why. Because odds are it's that perfectionistic inner critic getting after me and trying to make me feel bad about myself. In which case, I should probably tell him to shut up and just go clean the bathrooms. And third, always remember to think about how it makes you feel. I clean the bathrooms because sitting on a gross toilet and standing in a dirty shower makes me feel ill, and I'd rather not do that. So as nasty as it is, procrastinating it and shaming myself is worse than just getting around to doing it. When I'm finally done, I actually feel relief. That's so much better than shame. This works for the big things too. First, think about your priorities. What is most important to you in your life right now? And what do you need to do to foster that? For some people, that is spending time with family, saving up their money, going to school for their dream job, traveling the world, creating stability at home. Whatever your priorities are is valid. In my late 20s, I'm working on grappling with who I want to be as a person for the rest of my adult life. I'm really wrapping up a lot of the finding myself phase, and starting this podcast really lined up with that priority. So I finally stopped procrastinating. If it didn't make sense for me right now, then I think it's fine to wait, but make sure you know why. Make sure it isn't just fear that's stopping you. Second, think about your time. I do have extra hours in the day. Not always, but often, especially if I look honestly and realistically at my calendar. Another check yes to stop procrastinating this podcast. And finally, think about how it makes you feel. Writing and recording these episodes feels so freeing, and examining these thoughts feels so healing. Thinking about sharing these messages with other people makes me feel inspired. Yet another reason to not procrastinate this podcast. And so I encourage you to try out this method, to connect with yourself and to really truly think about what you procrastinate in life and why. If you do this with a really genuine lens, then I think you'll find that some things are perfectly acceptable to procrastinate at times, and some things not so much. Once we get the mindset of perfectionism out of the equation, everything becomes so much easier. I opened today's podcast with a quote attributed to Pablo Picasso. Only put off until tomorrow what you are willing to die having left undone. We don't need to procrastinate the things that our hearts are calling us to just because we fear the unknown outcomes. Embracing the fear of the unknown is really hard, and it feels really scary. But what are the costs of procrastinating the things that have the potential to bring you joy, no matter the form it may take? Thank you for listening today, fellow perfectionists. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have been enjoying the podcast, it would mean so much if you are willing to give it a 5-star rating and review. If you'd like to follow Perfectionists Anonymous, check out Perfectionists Anonymous Pod on Instagram. Until next time, fellow perfectionists.